Sorry, I'm so short. I hope I don't fall out of this chair. Good morning, everybody. Buenos dias. Thank you for being here this morning with us. As Isha mentioned, I'm Julia Trujillo, and I have the gift of moderating this morning's panel. One of the things I think I love about Inclusion Maine is that in a conference that it's about talent, we always highlight our local talent. So I think for me, having the opportunity to learn more and hear from these impactful leaders about the work that they do every day and that we can all learn from, that is in some instances replicated all over the country, is an exciting morning for Maine, and I'm so happy to be here. There was supposed to be kind of a word cloud. I don't know if that was set up or not. If not, we can you see it on the screen? I see it on the. So we thought that despite the happiness and excitement of this morning, we are all facing tricky cloud that, depending on the day, sometimes it feels more overwhelming than the hour prior. So we thought it was helpful to do this word cloud with your phones to get a sense from the room how we're all feeling, and hopefully our panelists can link some of the sentiment in the room in the remarks. So if you can scan the QR code, I'll give everyone a minute or two. And if you can give me a thumbs up that it's working for those of you who've been successful, I can see it. Thank you, everyone. I think this really helps us set the stage for our conversation. We hope to be with you for about an hour and a half. We have a lot of sort of content to go through, but if we can carve out some time at the end for some questions, we're aiming for that. I think I personally can relate to a lot of these emotions and feelings. I think what works for me, not every day, not every hour, but most of the day, is to try to anchor myself in what I see in my life as a constant, or something that doesn't have that constant change that we're experiencing, whether it's at home or at work. I think talent is still a challenge in Maine. Is not, the conversations that we're having this year are very similar to the ones that we had last year. And hopefully the conversations that we have this year are a little bit more urgent than the ones that we had last year. So that is a constant for me, is a certainty that hasn't gone away. I'm also fortunate that I work for the community college system. Our work is embedded in community. Our community is diverse and increasingly more so. And we're still committed to, I guess, connecting the full range of Maine's talent pool with the full range of opportunities here in our state. So that keeps me sane. So we're here still trying to meet, as I said last year, people where they dream, and that also brings me hope. So I hope that our panelists are able to look at this word cloud and connect it to the words that you'll be sharing and your wisdom with us today. So I'll briefly do introductions. Should we do introductions or should we go straight? No, I think let's just go straight to the Q&A. And then if you want to learn more about each of them, they're all fantastic. And I can share more after the panel, but let's get to the dialogue if it's okay. So we've identified some themes, and we are going to start with uncertainty. And this question it goes to Katie and Aisha Hall. What are some of the best practices you have adopted in recent months to continue to move workforce development efforts and other community efforts forward while navigating increasing changes in policies?
Hey. Oh, there we go. Hi, everyone. So Aisha Hall, Director of Strategic Partnerships for the Maine Department of Education. This isn't a difficult question because I've contemplated it for months. There has been there's this unsettling, and for me personally, I get determined when that happens, like when everybody's going all over the place. What do we do? I find that being the calm in the storm is helpful. So I would say I'll start personal and then I'll go broader into the Maine Department of Education because we're doing some cool things. For me, over the last few months, as a partnership director, you can imagine a lot of emails coming my way about the Department of Education in general because we've been under fire since January, I think. And so some of the things that I've done to stay grounded is to make sure that I'm checking on people. And I'm going to use, I don't want to use war and battle because it could be triggering, but this is how I've been feeling, unfortunately. And what I've been thinking about is when, we focus so much on the battles, we forget about the soldiers who are doing all the fighting. And so one of the things that I have made sure that I'm doing in the shift in policies and all the uncertainty is to check on people. Partnerships are about relationships and being mindful about the people, the educators. So I have my MVPs, or I say my most valuable or most vulnerable partners are my educators and students. And so staying focused there has been difficult, but it's what keeps us grounded, specifically as an educator and someone working for the Department of Education. Our Commissioner Macon, has been awesome. She's every meeting. So first of all, we meet, and we stop meeting so often, but on Mondays and Thursdays at 12, we do debriefs with our Attorney General and our Commissioner to make sure we're all on the same page. And you can imagine staying connected, staying in relationship with the people. It's 200 plus people working at the Maine Department of Education. And so being connected as human beings, having moments to have a WTF. I don't know if some of you know me, I have a WTF book. And I write in my little WTF corner about all the things that I'm hearing so that I can actually think about being empathetic. Okay, what are the people in my office feeling? What about federal programs? What are they going through? Who do I need to check on? And that's practical stuff. I wrote down some of the specifics that we're doing at the department. So this means we're building solutions, not just for educators, but students and our partners. Our best practice, for me as a director of strategic partnerships, our best practice is our long-term partnerships. So I'm not just looking for how funding is going to be supplemented, but I'm looking for the people and the organizations and systems that are aligned with our 6 priorities. And we do have 6 priorities, not going to tell you all of them because they're online, but I keep them in my heart and in my head so that every person and every organization, every entity we're talking about or talking with, I'm saying, how are we dealing with equity, diversity, inclusion? How are we focusing on our students? How are we focusing on the whole child? And what does that look like practically for our educator community. Okay, so I'll pass it on.
Thank you. I'm Katie Brown. I'm the founder and chief education officer of NGen. If you don't know what NGen is, we are a public benefit corporation, and our mission is to remove English as a barrier for the multilingual workforce. So we work with immigrants, refugees, speakers of other languages, and we do it in every state. One of the reasons why I'm so excited to be on this panel and to talk about the work that you all are doing in Maine is that you are doing an amazing job when it comes to a statewide approach to navigating uncertainty with the programs that you have put in place to help uplift the multilingual workforce. So when everything is uncertain, sort of like Aisha said, it's best to focus on what you can control and on what resources are available to you. In the state of Maine, you have the Maine Department of Labor and the Maine Department of Education working together to create pathways to apprenticeship programs for multilingual workers. This is a state with very low unemployment and a large population of new Mainers. Those new Mainers come with diverse talents, with skills and credentials from other countries, and as a state, you all are doing an amazing job of finding pathways for them to get access to family-sustaining wages. So other things that I've seen happening at the state level are a partnership between the Chamber of Commerce and the Office of New Americans and the New Mainers Resource Center to create opportunity for employers to upskill their workforce so that they can create internal talent pipelines. People in entry-level roles that don't necessarily require English skills, getting the skills they need to move into other roles in the organization, opening up more entry-level roles. All of this work centers on employers, and when everything is uncertain and you are hearing all sorts of rhetoric, some things remain true. We have 1 in 5 workers in the US is foreign-born. 1 in 10 workers in the US is learning English as a second language. These are all people who are working in our economy, in our communities, in cities, and in rural areas. And we know that if we help them get English skills integrated with workforce skills, we can build the workforces that we need. And so this is the kind of work that I think helps when people are confused and overwhelmed and not sure what to do. Focus on the resources you have available and on things that you know work.
Can you hear me now? Yes, I should shut it off. Now this question is more directed toward economic development and inclusion and community development, and we're hoping to hear from Lisa and from Marfine. In 2024, a refreshed version of the 10-year economic development plan strategy was released. The 2024 reset highlights the progress made from the start of the strategy in 2019 and adds new critical priorities. With the goal of attracting 75,000 people to Maine's talent pool by 2029, what connections do you see between developing relationships with diverse communities and meeting workforce needs of businesses for economic growth?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lisa Jones, and I'm the founder of Black Travel Maine. And as far as economic development, since the report came out, Julia, the state still has some work to do as far as recruiting these 75,000. I can speak to it on my work. We've been able to help place people through, I just get messages on our page asking, to connect us to jobs, and I had a dentist reach out to us in Presque Isle. And I think the most important thing when they reach out and they're interested in relocating here is there a community here for them? And that question seems to come up almost with everyone, and I feel that's why they've been reaching out to me to find out before we take these jobs in Maine, is it a place that we want to make home? And so I think we need to address that, which is why I feel the work that we're doing at Black Travel Maine is so important. We're just not exposing Maine on a national level, but we're also exposing and bringing the community together and with the tourism and the people, as Mainers call them, from away. Bridging those two are so important. As you know, a person has to visit as a tourist before they decide they want to move somewhere. So it really starts with that initial impression of the state. And I feel like the more we build community here, and we seem to be doing even in these times, I feel like, I just take a look at my event that we just did at the Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens, and the number of people who traveled both locally and out of state told me how much this work is needed and it's attracting people to Maine, which ultimately helps our economic impact here. Thank you.
Marfin?
So yes, I'm executive director of Kamai Maine, but I also wear a lot of hats. And I served 5 years on the Portland Planning Board, which is a lot of years for a 34-year-old to spend endless amounts of hours receiving sometimes very mean public comments, worse than tweets. And then I served, I was the first Cambodian elected official in Maine when I was elected as an at-large charter commissioner. So I approach these issues from multiple perspectives. And I think from an economic development standpoint, there's just so much potential. Even if we just look at here in the greater Portland area, a statistic I like to throw out that was prompted by the 75,000 population number was Portland's population used to be around 75,000. Today, it's around 68,000, maybe pushing 69,000. I haven't looked at it since I left the planning board. So it makes you wonder what happened between the 1950s and now for Portland's population alone to drop from 75,000 to 68,000. And part of it is the whole false urban planning narrative of urban renewal, which gave us, I know a lot of us love Franklin Arterial and Spring Street, which we happen to be on today, but Franklin Arterial and Spring Street bulldozed through communities of color, immigrant communities, communities that were starting points for many Italian families. And so Franklin Arterial, if you just picture entire communities that used to exist there, houses, homes, and then Spring Street, where they had grand plans for a downtown section where people would just rush off the highway to come to Spring Street to experience a lot of the things that Portland has to offer, was the narrative. But in doing so, pushed out many families, limited the number of housing stock that was available to people. And so when we're talking about how do we take bold action and innovate on growth, we also have to talk about what happened in the past so that we don't repeat the same mistakes as we did in the past. And so if we just look at Greater Portland alone, there's just so much opportunity, not only in terms of housing, but also transportation. A lot of, to connect this with the immigrant population and BIPOC communities, at least in Portland here, when we were doing Recode, we were talking about removing parking minimums. And I know parking is a headache for many, but there is a goal behind that of sustainability, of helping us address climate change and emissions. And the thing that Portland doesn't do well is set sort of a goal to reduce parking, but not offer alternatives to single car usage. And so just the Greater Portland alone, we could do a lot more in terms of public transportation, not only in terms of GPCOG, but for me, I've been pressing some of my friends on the council and in government to really think bolder than just buses. If we combine Greater Portland together, there's opportunity for light rail. But I think the issue that we have as professionals in the business world, the nonprofit world, and the intersecting industries in between is we're waiting for state government and local government to take action. In today's climate, they're taking action on very specific things, which you all read about in the headlines. But I think it's up to businesses who need more employees, who need more workers, who need more talent, for nonprofits who are burdened by the sheer amount of work in terms of social services, direct services, transportation, and the sheer amount of cost of maintaining those programs, to say to government, hey, enough is enough, stop slow walking progress and innovation if you really want to grow the economy, if you really want to grow our workforce, if you really want to grow housing. Sorry, I got on a roll and broke the mic. Um, we, as business professionals, as nonprofit professionals in the social services area, we really need to push the state move faster, and local governments especially move faster on these ideas. Improving our bus system might seem like, oh, that's just a transportation issue, but it affects immigrants who are trying to get to work, and many workers who are priced out of Portland, who are having to bus in from Westbrook, South Portland, or other areas. There's a time cost there, and when the bus is late, guess who's late to work? Guess what happens to productivity? Guess what happens to profit margins and all those types of things? And so I got a little on a little bit of a soapbox, but I think that's my I'll end there.
Well, it's a great segue into the next question about upskilling and talent. And we're hoping that both, maybe we'll follow first and then Katie can speak to this question. Over the next 2 decades, about 2/3 of Maine's workforce is expected to retire, leaving a shortfall of over 100,000 skilled workers needed in the labor force. To ensure we can meet the workforce needs of our industries, we will need to continue to provide upskilling, training opportunities, and ensure workplaces work for all people and the communities, going back to your point, Marfine. What are some of the best practices you have learned in offering training opportunities in Maine, and how are you reaching all people, but particularly from diverse backgrounds or people in rural communities?
Thank you. Mavalo Chitam, and I'm the Executive Director for the Maine Immigrant Rights Coalition. I think if you saw a picture of me with purple hair, that's me. Over the years, I've had to wear these bold looks to be bold. But, when I looked at, some of the words here, I can feel almost everything except for maybe one. Somebody said to the what was that? I can feel almost every emotion there. So today, I was really, really struggling coming here. And I want to be true to my emotions. The work we're doing now is really, really hard. What we're doing today is, I was on a national panel yesterday, and we're told, we're looking at the word resilient. And I can feel every emotion of that, because it's asking me to be okay. It's asking me to bounce back and talk about transportation. The world we're living in today in the United States has changed. When we're talking about wanting to train, kids of color, BIPOC kids, it's a very different world. What you will hear today is our best practices as we have them on paper. But they're very, very difficult in this time for you to execute. So as we talk about, recruitment, as we talk about, talent, skills, it's very, very difficult to execute any of that. So you have to keep wearing this hat today and then get what's on paper. And then you take off another hat. It's very, very difficult. And I want to be true. I want to be true to the world that we're living in. So I hope that our panelists, as we speak, you can hear that we're talking to you about what's on paper, but it's very, very difficult to execute that. We have a program that we are working with a couple of partners. Interwork, Stephanie is here. David, I don't think David is here somewhere. Resilient Coders in Boston. This is about training diverse kids of color on a pathway to software engineering. That's what we have on paper. But every day we get a call or an email from one of the students saying, I don't have housing. One of the students still doesn't have her, I think it's a work permit. But this is a kid who wants to train in this program. When we were looking at that program, we're looking at ourselves and say, does this align with our values as Maine Immigrant Rights Coalition? And that's what is on paper as the best practice. Does this align with your values, with your mission? Does this bring diversity? But does this also create a pathway? If you all know about software engineering, that is a field that most of our immigrants, except for the Asian community, they're just smart people, But for the most of it, you have to have a boot camp for you to train in a short time, but we have to pay you to be in class. Those are some of the best practices. Pay you to go to school, to be in class, be attentive, so that you don't have to find another job. So you have to create intentional programs for training. The recruitment was very difficult. We had over 80 or 100 applications. And this is the age group of 18 to 34. It was very difficult for a cohort of only 10. So it's not easy. But you have to create intentional plans for a program to happen. You have to create mentors. You have to align employers.
Thank you, Mufalo.
Thank you, Mufalo. And thank you, Mufalo, for that. But I want to piggyback off of that and also say we have to work together. And that includes our elected officials. I see Pius in the room. We all have to work together, and we all have to hold officials accountable to their votes as well and how it affects our community. And I think that's a very important thing. There were a lot of things that came down this week that intentionally left funding out for Black Travel Maine. And I'm going to speak about that because that's important. If anyone has seen my work, knows the work is important and it needs to be done here. And we need people who are going to speak up for the work. And even people like us who look like us need to speak up for the work as well. And Mufalo knows. She stepped in on a situation for me, and I'll never forget that. We have to work together or we're not going to get anywhere and we're not going to be able to move this agenda forward. Yes, IntoWork, she's a great partner. She's been working with me as well. We know who the allies are and the allies that are standing with us, but we need more of those allies standing with us as well. And I'm glad you brought up to speak honest and openly, and we should be able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Katie?
I want to piggyback on a couple of things. One of them is that we have to listen to the people that we're serving. So we can't make decisions about what upskilling means without understanding the needs of the people who are being upskilled. And we need to understand what's going to happen to them. The worst thing we can do is waste time. And when we don't work together and we build programs that are in silos, that's what happens. And so if there are kids who don't have transportation to the program that they got into, so they have 1 of 10 spots, but they can't use it, that is a tragedy. We need to make sure that we listen to what the constituents that we're serving need and that we're also preparing them for jobs that employers have. So having the employer voice at the table is really, really important. We have internationally trained professionals who are coming here with valuable skills and credentials, who speak multiple languages. Multilingualism is an asset that often does not get lifted up. People look at brown people who speak with an accent and they think, oh, that person isn't good enough. And the truth is that person speaks at least 2 languages fluently. An accent means that you are multilingual. You can deliver customer service in multiple languages. You can read training materials in multiple languages. You can teach and caregive in multiple languages. Those are things to be celebrated. And when we're thinking about creating talent pipelines and helping people get into the open roles that we have, employers need to do the work to identify what the skills gaps are in their organizations and what programs will help people get into those skills gaps. But if this work is not happening with collaborative conversations between workforce development, education, community-based organization, and employers, then we're going to waste people's time, and we don't have any time that can be wasted. And so when I listen to what you were saying, that's what is making me think it's that this work all needs to be more efficient, and it can't be more efficient if we don't start out by listening to what people need.
Thank you. And I think I'll add that that constant that I was speaking to in the beginning, there's a constant that belongs to me in a framework of belonging that is something that I uniquely speak to, but there's a constant that we all share. And I think many of us were here back in 2019, 2020, when we were living a whole different experience on diversity, equity, and inclusion and belonging. And that constant for those of us who've been doing the work, who live it every day, is an important North Star that we should continue to hold high. It fractions the work, it limits possibility, it hurts families. So I think holding that accountability that we all share is also an important piece. We've talked a lot about community at large. Now I would like to go a little bit more nuanced into the workplace, which is another important community, and we spend a lot of hours of our day at work. And this question is for both Katie and Marfine, and others if they'd like to also contribute. Over the last few decades, there has been a significant increase in people from racially diverse backgrounds coming to Maine, often coming from places where English is not the primary language. How can we provide training opportunities that are accessible and improve belonging for English language learners or multilingual learners in the workplace and community? And we can start with you, Katie, if that works.
So the first thing to do is to make sure that there is opportunity. Most people don't know this. As a country, the United States meets the needs of fewer than 4% of our adult English learners. If you're working in an organization that does offer English as a second language, you don't realize that most people aren't able to get access to your training programs because of logistical barriers, transportation barriers, financial barriers, caregiving barriers. So over the last 5 years, I've seen a huge increase in employers offering English as a foundational benefit to their frontline workers. And this type of English instruction that's often done with community-based organizations and is tied to the needs of both the workers and the employer is what's moving the needle on helping multilingual workers get the English skills they need to be included. Yesterday, we heard a statistic that I wrote down because it was so striking, which is that the retention rate for employees in ESL classes at Central Maine Healthcare is 97%. This is repeated across the country. When I look at national retention numbers for multilingual workers who are enrolled in ESL programs that are paid for by their employer, for every dollar that employers put into a program like that, they get $1.40 back. We see the same thing with state governments. For every dollar invested in English upskilling, state governments see $6 back. This isn't an expense, this is an investment. And it's investment in new community members bringing talent and skills. Like I said, multilingualism. If you can take a whole bunch of new Mainers, help them get the English skills they need to succeed in your workplace, then they'll be able to speak multiple languages, contribute to the workplace, go back out into the community and bring everyone together to get the kind of collaboration that we know we need for workplaces to be successful.
I think one of the first questions to ask, in addition to getting feedback from workers from different backgrounds and cultures and languages, is to also do the internal work. And sometimes there's arguments of chicken or the egg. whatever that analogy is. Do we do the internal work first, or do we do the attract diverse talent and retention first? Like, what comes first? And oftentimes, employers get stuck just in that question. But you can do, in this case, I'm giving you permission to walk and chew gum at the same time. So as you're trying to attract talent and retain talent, also continually ask yourself, what is our workplace culture? Is it a monoculture? Are we just attracting people so that we can just absorb them into, I'm a Star Trek fan, so our Borg cube, and they just become like us, where they do the trainings, they do the onboarding, they do the HR process, they do the round robin with all the staff, and the expectation, which might be assumed and might be ingrained, is we're welcoming you into the fold, fit into our culture. And that can mean many things for workers of BIPOC or immigrant backgrounds, or LGBTQ as well. You know, they might feel the pressure to fit in to a workplace culture that's already there. How many of you know the term the good old boys club? So there used to be a day back decades ago where you had to know someone to get into the room, and you had to do certain things to be able to fit in, and for folks to like you, promote you, give you a job, invest in your idea, and take you, the other important thing is to take you seriously. Sometimes we recruit and we employ, but we don't want to take people seriously. They're just there to do their job. And so that's the big question: is my workplace culture a monoculture? If it's a monoculture, it could be a big explanation of why your company is not doing as well as it could be, or your organization is not doing as well as it could be. Because as we all know from the research, diversity and inclusion and multiculturalism brings a whole lot of innovation that would not otherwise be there. When you bring in languages, when you bring in different cultures, you get different perspectives. You have different conversations, expanded conversations, broader conversations, rather than just sticking to the straight and narrow of this is the way it's been done, this is the way it should always be. You're here to help us meet our bottom line, and to do that. And so that's the big question. Is my workplace a monoculture? And if so, how can I change that?
So going back to also Mufalo's point and the best practices that you're highlighting and the advice and that the panelists have for all of you, and in an effort to try to keep the conversation authentic and within the fabric of today's realities, I'd like to talk about a little bit of that change and the landscape change. Over the last several months, there has been a shift in some federal policies for organizations seeking federal funding or supporting this work. What would you recommend? What could be adopted when applying for federal grants or implementing these kinds of programs to continue the work? What are your words of advice? And I'll start with Mufalo and then maybe go to Aisha, but anybody, of course, can contribute. Is a big question.
I think the question is, are there any federal grants to apply to? And again, back to, I hope Aisha here can can save me, because we've just, in a last maybe month or two, the Immigrant Welcome Center closed down. Most of our, community-based organizations are either, laid off people, streamlined, rethinking if they will exist. There is no money. We came through COVID, past, I think had funding that was state, federal, that's all, dried up. We had some funding through Maine State Housing on shelters, supporting English, adult education, anything that's BIPOC, DEI, gone. So when we have to think about what are the best practices, we'll have to reinvent what that is. And I'm saying this to all the executive directors, all the elected officials. The question is, where are you sitting to even have that discussion? Which table? Because the tables are all gone. There's no place. What we know, how we went for funding, whether it was at state level, municipal, CBDG, funding, everything that you think you had, if you are small, we always talk about have a rainy day. My accountant is always reminding me, have 6 months. I have no 6 months. I don't even have 1 month. So this is reality. So if we're gonna talk about best practices, and I've been saying to folks, we need to be at the table. You need to be at the table. The question is which table and who has the table. But wherever there's a conversation around coordination, as an organization, we're a coalition and we're trying to pull our members together around shared program so that we can have shared funding. That's one best practice. The question is, where is that funding? We had to submit an application at national, from a national funder. They had us scrub it clean. That's the world we're living in. So your traditional fundraising, gone. So we're having to recreate. And we're gonna need each one of you. When you have a table where you're recreating, call someone. But before you even finish recreating, there's a new policy and change, and whatever you had planned for 2 hours is gone. So it's very challenging to find funding. We're having to, and I've been telling our organization, who did a lot of direct service referrals because they had funding. Right now, the clients, most clients who are diverse have no funding following them. So if you have funding in your organization and you are not skilled to do it, pass the funding with the client. Don't hold on to the funding. Pass the funding to the client, to the organization that is an expert. Don't just pass the client with no funding. That's what we're experiencing right now. And I'm telling our organization, don't do it. I tell my staff, we're not traveling, we're not paid, but there's no funding.
Thank you. This is going to be she already told me to be honest and transparent. And honestly, for myself, this is where I think I shine individually. The government isn't new. This doesn't, and hopefully I don't offend anybody. I'm not nonchalant. I work with the department. I don't work for the department. I always keep that in my mind. And so that means that I'm modeling a lot of times patience on display. I brought my mom with me today. She's an old lady, not really, but when I think about her, this is not her first rodeo. And so I'm talking to her every day, and she's in Florida now actually, and watching the news. And I'm reminded of two things. First off, I work for the Department of Education. I told y'all the kids are my MVPs. Grown-ups suck. The kids are okay, but grown-ups are sucking. And I have been saying that for the last 4 years. Yeah. I too am one of those grown-ups. And so also keeping that in mind, we talking about best practices in the landscape changes of policies and grants, right? So when I think about how many people, even in this room, have the ability to make really, really important decisions, but don't always have to be held accountable because they are so powerful. They have so much, they do know people. They may be a part of that good old boys club. We got to hold each other accountable there. So every time I speak, I remind us the kids are okay. It's the grown-ups that need the work. We're not, that when we talked about the culture, we know this stuff, y'all. We know these things, but individually, we have to make those independent decisions to invite somebody to the table, to collaborate and coordinate when you know that there are some funds available. And then yeah, this is a hard question, Julia. It's hard not to be honest. I'll also be honest about the fact that as a government person, this is not where I expected to be. I never thought that I'd be here. I always worked outside as an independent because, quote unquote, the man, we already talked about the good old boys club, so I could say stuff like that. This is a safe space. Working against the man and making sure that the people that are in my charge are protected, advocated for, and supported. That changes for me when I've got there, I'm like, ooh, stealth mode ninja, I've gotten to the department, let's see how this thing works. And then everything changed. How you get money, how you coordinate and collaborate. Every policy that you thought you knew how it would be translated is now foreign. And we all, again, with those sucky grown-ups acting like they didn't know what that meant that before January. It's a really hard place to navigate right now. But when we think about best practices, I would say, and I'll get technical in a minute, but I'll say that it always starts with the individual. What are your practices? Are there some things that you used to do that now you can't do no more because it's putting the next person in a bad situation? When I think about, because collaboration, that's the key. Collaborate early. I'll get the real answer in. Collaborate early, collaborate well. Money is a resource, it's a tool. It should not be the driver. And so when you're thinking about, I remember when I first got here, right before COVID, I was like, y'all doing a whole lot of stuff and y'all got a whole lot of money. Oh God, times have changed. Y'all got a whole lot of money, but I don't see any impact being made, or I don't see us talking about the impact that this big grant just made. We're all sitting around this table and talking, but the kids and my MVPs, the BIPOC and the neurodivergence, like we're not even in the room. I'm in the room, but I can't represent all these identities at one time. And so it comes down to individuals making really good decisions about doing the next hardest thing. And what was hard before, it's not as hard now, but there's some easy things that used to be easy. Like, again, inviting someone to you had that conversation at that last conference. Look for that card because you just got word that there's some funding from this foundation that maybe no one's ever heard of. This is me being facetious. I don't know this. I don't know about this funding. But again, one of my jobs as the Director of Strategic Partnership is to do that, is to go seeking out funding. Again, where's the funding? We down to just basic civil rights right now. I'm in the Office of Innovation, which is an awesome office to have in a department in government. But that means defending innovation. Innovation means doing things a different way. And right now, people are so nervous to do things differently. And so I guess what somebody said, oh, well, we're all exhausted. So you think about those sucky grown-ups who are exhausted. You know that you need rest. You need to be less stressed, and you make good decisions. We're all under duress. And I also believe that that is a plan. That's a strategy to keep us all separate, siloed, and trying to figure out the lack. Because it exists. This money is out there. This money exists. It didn't go anywhere. But the people making those bad decisions or those decisions that don't benefit others, that's what we should be looking at. And so I always think, like I said, funding isn't a tool. I mean, funding is a tool, it's not the driver. And so if you're programming, if the things that you want to do are meant to impact people, make sure you check with those people that you're trying to impact to make sure that that's what's needed. And a lot of times those answers to those questions give you the passion, the drive, and a new perspective on who needs to be at the table and why they're at the table. And I could talk about being at tables all day because, again, when you at that table, I talked about patience on display. Mafala, you talked about your hair being purple and all that kind of stuff. When you're at that table, we need to drop the respectability politics. I, I think I look nice today, but I'm usually going in a space knowing that I'm going to be sitting at tables with people who expect something of me in this black girl queer body. I'm expected to be a certain way and do a certain thing. A best practice is to be your whole entire self when you're in situations so that you're not caught up in that sucky grown up mindset of, I gotta prove myself. It's not enough. He won't work with me. This is sometimes it starts internally of being your whole self and dealing with who you are right now. Because again, there's some really, really big decisions being made by some really emotionally and unintelligent people. And I'm saying that with respect. I'm a school psychologist. I do this for a living. I'm not saying that I'm an expert at emotions and things, but I do, pat myself on the head. Their emotional intelligence for an individual, especially grown-ups, is so important right now. So I want to give honor to Mafala talking about that reality. I can tell you about me going to our committee sessions and being my whole entire self, not saying a word, just being present when decisions are being made because I have that ability to do so. That's really important. I don't think I have anything else. Policy, as far as the commissioner in my office, in my department, she says, do what you've been doing until they legit tell you you cannot do that anymore. And then when they tell you that, ask them why and start like really breaking that thing down. Okay, I'll stop.
Awesome. Lisa, would you
And
like?
I just wanted to add an important part to that, and I've been working on this a lot, is teaching philanthropy within our own communities. It is time, a lot of us, I'm in some organizations where I watch these women close down Louis Vuitton and Gucci stores in New York City. It's time to start teaching people how to give back and to choose the organizations that they want to support. Then we can control our own narrative that way. So that's one of the things, I would love to work with you on, philanthropy and how we can reach out to some of these national organizations and people who give money on a regular to good causes and stop always looking for the federal government to give us grants and assistance. Why can't we learn to, I've been saying this for a long time. I've had some experience at fundraising, and I've seen a lot of money be raised in amazing ways where it's not the government and it's not federal grants. So
Money is
I
out
just
there.
wanted to say that.
And we have time for one more question from our panelists, and then we hope to open it up for questions in the audience for about 30 minutes. So the last question is internal, more so in the employer setting. And we're hoping that Mufalo, Marfin, and maybe Aisha can contribute to shining some light on this. Education for team members to ensure the inclusion of people from diverse backgrounds, especially within the workplace, is important. It is a critical step when attracting talent from all backgrounds to ensure your workplace is ready for each of us. What are topics you've been looking at to provide education on your team or employers in your network?
Big question. So I run an organization where we're a staff team of 5. We're all from the Cambodian community because we're serving the Cambodian community. So even within my team, there are cultural differences. I was adopted, raised white, and I joke, I walk like I'm white, I dress like I'm white. And 2 of my staff are American-born Cambodian Americans, and then 2 of my staff are from Cambodia who moved to the United States. And so um, the way work is done in Cambodia, very different. Very fast paced, very sort of instant decision making, and um, that creates some conflict, right? Especially when they're sitting in a place in a meeting with me, and I'm just like, okay, let's think this out. It's kind of like, what's the plan for this program? What's going into this program? How much money do I need to raise? Um, and so the answer wasn't like, let's not do that. The answer was, let's meet in the middle, let's get the staff together to figure out, is this what our community needs? So that's just an example of internally, um, even within organizations run by communities of color, we still have to navigate the cultural differences and the language differences, because I only know like 10% Khmer. And so for other employers, I would say there are ample resources in just the Maine community, and as well as Engage, to offer you paths forward to working with diverse talent and retaining them. Um, I think one of the important things is building the pipeline. As you're building a pipeline, how are you looking into different schools, HBCUs, sort of, I know there tends to be some confusion about, I guess the question is like, oh, where do we find workers who are from communities of color? I think that's kind of the wrong question to ask. I think the question to ask is, how do you make your organization attractive through your multicultural workplace culture, going back to that, and then showing up, not necessarily going to Kennedy Park or Riverton where you assume there are people of color, but showing up at the USMs, and even the Bowdens and the UMaine Oronos, and as well as the HBCUs, and just popping up and just looking at the student population to see that there is diversity in student populations, and how do you reach out to them? How do you attract them? Because sometimes what's going on in their head is like, excuse my French, holy crap, I have to graduate, I have to get a job, I have to pay bills, I have to afford a place on my own. And so that's where their brain's at. Their brain is not necessarily, what's the coolest company that has the most welcoming culture in the world, or in Maine. And so making sure that you're attracting them by intentionally focusing them on at these expos. I think there's one at Inclusion Maine, right? Where potential employees can meet potential employers. And so it's a hard balance of not doing enough, but also not overthinking it. Because when you start to overthink it, you're going to make mistakes. And you're going to start sort of targeting in a way that's othering, recruiting in a way that's othering, making assumptions that is othering to people who just want to work, who want to live out loud, I think was one of the phrases. So.
Thank you.
So I call it the clash of cultures. Keeping it real, I had no experience managing white people. Zero. I come from a Zambia black. I worked with maybe one white person somewhere in the corner, some Asians. I didn't manage nobody. I was hired in 2017 when Merck incorporated as a standalone organization. I was very happy for like 2017, 2019, because I worked by myself. And then I had to hire my first intern from Betts College, a white girl from South Africa. She was still white. Then I had to fast forward. The COVID happened. We just grew, and my staff are here, so I'm gonna say business here. We grew overnight. White people, immigrants, different cultures, different languages. Some were educated in through the French system. Some came from Belgium system. I came from a British system. Then we put us all together. Here is funding. Go change the world. That is a recipe for disaster. I say this to HR. You need to disrupt HR. Because when we're talking about diversity, I think we have this nice, tagline. If you're an ED and you have that much diversity, you know what I'm talking about. My first job was at USM. I think 3-4 stories. I was the only, black person. That was in 2000. I think it's changed now. Then I went to United Way, and this is where my first, oh my goodness, I'm different, I'm alone. I had my lunch, went in the lunchroom, and warmed my food. The whole office smell. I mean, they still smell, but, and I was just like, and nobody could say anything to me. Everybody was just uncomfortable. But I have one friend who's remained best friend to this day. She was just like, what the heck are you eating? I'm saying all this because, again, I said I have things on paper. But I say, best practice. If you don't have experience managing a person of color, an immigrant, as an ED, get help. You need to invest money and time in learning practically. If you don't have experience being supervised by an immigrant, when you're applying for a job at Maine Immigrant Rights Coalition, we're going to be learning. Mafine was talking about the diversity within. So you're always learning. But we don't have money in HR to teach us. But we don't even have HR. If somebody has the training, please sign me up, because I'm always learning. And when you bring people from different backgrounds and put them into one place, and I say this to my staff, I hear different. I understand different because I'm coming from a very different, instruction of learning. Planning, very different because we did it differently. And so it doesn't make your peer less smart. They're just different. You just have to learn how they do their work. And so all that much diversity, Aisha, save us.
Well, no need, because what we do as educators is built-in learning. Curiosity is always a good thing. Like I said, I'm in the Office of Innovation, and I am the Director of Strategic Partnerships. And so right there, our commissioner made sure that there was space for the conversations that needed to happen. And we're also, the foundation is relationship, and so people. So, and I think I'm so diverse internally and externally. But sometimes, I think I already said this, that when you are so focused on the war, the challenge, you forget about the people, that there's a person, that even though we have cultural differences, those differences can add so much flavor, so much zest to the relationship, whether it be with one person or whether it be with a group. And so I'll stay practical. I'll stay on my paper because this is something that I made sure that was a priority in our office. If we say we are going to be increasing the trust in the education system, and specifically in Maine, and also priority 6, I'll jump down. We got 6 of them. 1 was increased trust. 6 is empowering us as educators and people in the Maine Department of Education to, and I don't like they said something about human capital. I don't like that. I don't like to be thought of as that. But I do know that if you're going to talk about educating people on diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, because that's the foundation of your priorities, that you have to make space for the people, the 200 plus people on your staff to learn. And so maybe last year, I think they know who they hired. So I'm like, Pender. So I see we got DEI on here, but we don't have a DEI director anymore. What's that about? Oh, well, DEI is embedded, so we have to make sure that it's embedded. Okay, so what are we doing to embed that? Because I have not talked to anybody outside of a conversation that I initiated about diversity, about belonging. We have a diverse educator workforce priority, but we haven't talked about retention, and we talked about a lot of that on here. But if it's on the paper, you need to be focused on it. So what we're doing, it's called Fourth Wednesday Cross Collaborative Team Time, and every office and every team has the opportunity to present how their work and the work that they do every day is steeped in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. I think the most recent one we had was on food and nutrition. And so talking about how food and school meals, which we still get money for, shout out to the ASDA, we still get money for, how that is feeding our students, not just in their bellies, but their souls, their culture. So we do a lot of things. And again, this is all on our website, so I won't waste time. But getting to know what the food and nutrition or the child nutrition teams are doing to make sure that people know about the different foods and different cultures in different areas. I feel blessed to be in Maine because we're local control. I know that can be a gift and a curse, but we have 16 counties. I'm still new here, y'all. But for every county, there's a different culture and a different feel and a different vibe. And to be able to say, okay, Department of Education, what does that look like in Penobscot? What does it look like in Lewiston, Auburn to nurture a child through food? And how do we make that something that expresses diversity, equity, inclusion, and makes them feel like they belong? And so the other one is data. The one before that, we talked about data as a tool for inclusion. So the topics that we talk about, again, education gives us a really good platform. I don't have to make things up. I don't have to say, hey, are we going to do this DEI thing today? Like, this is what we're doing. We're educators, and that's our purpose. And so I would say we're all educators. I hope you're all continual learners. And so making that the focal point of, again, I'm going to come back to the individual because I know y'all running organizations and companies and stuff, but you're people first, right? And so when I think about the topics, thinking about the people that you're with, every county, everywhere that I go in Maine, it's a different flavor now. I used to say it's the same flavor of white, same flavor of crazy. But I now, and again, with my own biases, being curious about, well, is that true? I don't feel like I want to go to that what's called a bedroom town, but there are schools there that need our support. So what does that look like? Usually what I do when I talk about inner office, I take somebody with me. If they say they're going to some place I can't pronounce, I'm jumping in the car. And on that journey, I'm with my colleague talking about what it means to do the work that I do and do the work that she does to serve the people that we're serving. And right there, diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is happening. And so some of those topics that you think you need to be having, I think somebody said, don't try so hard. You don't have to try hard here. I feel like I've had the experience of people being very open and very ignorant and naive. And to me, as a school psychologist, as a person who was an educator, a critical thinker, that stuff excites me. Somebody said optimistically defiant. Like that to me, being able to be optimistic about the fact that I'm about to be in a room with one of God's children that I may not like, or that I may have a really strong bias about. If you want to talk about topics, do case studies. You know you've had a situation or you've had an issue, whatever your color, race, creed, ethnicity, whatever it is, you've had some sort of encounter where diversity was an issue. Utilize that. Find a group of people that you work with and have coffee and just decide to talk about it. It's not going to happen like it used to. We have to manufacture these experiences. I don't think it's unfortunate that we're doing that. I think it makes us intentional, because I'm gonna come back because I know it's the last question. Grown-ups are sucking. We're sucking, guys. We're not holding ourselves accountable, and we're very, very happy to hold everyone else accountable and tell everybody else what they're not doing and how bad it's going and how horrible things are on a wide scale. In places where we don't live, things we cannot control, I do believe in the ripple effect. So that's a topic, what you're doing, how that's impacting other people. And another topic, this is very important. I want to say that emotional learning and emotional management and regulation for adults, we don't do that. There's no place where we have that training, and so we have to manufacture that for ourselves. If you have any questions about how to do that, I have a lot of apps. I have a lot of meditative things. Just come find me. But we need to really focus on the individual so that we can be more attentive and make a better impact in the groups and the organizations that we're in. Because we can't suck by ourselves, but we can suck by ourselves, but we don't have to. Okay, that's it.
Thank you. So to wrap it up, something that did not quite come up, and I think maybe all of us are sort of part of this umbrella, is that we've heard a lot lately, as long as you're doing the work and you sort of erase the words and so on, that's what matters. And I think for me, both employers, schools have such an important role in continue to help us to be seen, be known that we still matter, that my kids, when they're speaking Spanish in school, are not going to be laughed at, or that the values when I decided to take this job are still there. There's a unique opportunity to create belonging within the organization, your employer, and something as maybe minute as erasing one word, it's critical and very meaningful to some of us. So as you're thinking everything through, talking about that ripple effect, there's support here across the state, but just don't forget that just keeping that constant on your values has a very meaningful effect across the community. So we're gonna open, well, first thank you to our panelists. And we have about 15 minutes for questions, so maybe 2 or 3 questions if anybody has one. I see one in the back, and I don't know if
So, sorry, not really a question, but a comment. We were talking about funding, and we were here last night speaking, and there is some funding, and I just wanted to make some people aware of it. In the counties, we do have some workforce development boards. I'm on the executive board of the Northern Workforce Development Board, and there is some funding. So if you haven't taken advantage of some of that, please do. Also, in your communities, often people are willing to sponsor some education. So in our case, I work for Northern Light Health. Sometimes a small community bank will sponsor someone to go through nursing school or do something like that on a small scale. So if you wanted to do something on a small scale, you can certainly just look out for your partners. We're doing some great work with the Maine Community College System with the Harold Alfong grant as well. So just reach out. If you have any questions, you can look around too. There's another question.
Hello. Thank you for all of you. My name is Corey. I am the executive director of the Chamber of Commerce in Bath, Brunswick, and Topsom. And I feel really strongly that chambers of commerce can be an ally in all of this work. I really feel like we can be the convener of conversations, and we need to be really in this moment. My question is for business owners that do not have a diverse workforce and are just unfamiliar with having a diverse workforce, what kind of events or programs or something, what is our first step in initiating a program or an event or whatever to get them familiar with diversity and kind of get over some of those roadblocks? Because when I think of things, everything I feel feels disingenuous. You know, it almost feels like I'm astroturfing, and it's like, what can I do that is genuine and heartfelt and meaningful that doesn't feel like I'm not being genuine, I guess.
Who would like to go?
I mean, I'll take it. Recently, Lincoln County reached out to me, economic development team, to work with me. Wiscasset has a lot of cultural assets that we can use that would actually help the area by driving in tourism to these assets. So, just being open to new ideas, especially in my realm where tourism is down across the state right now. And tourism, can drive economics into these rural areas. So, and there's so many amazing assets that are not just in Portland. I also talk about the farm to table dining experiences and the things that people from cities would love to experience coming into rural areas. There's so much opportunity to work with us. And I'd love to, to reach out with you and work with you. There are some chambers I've been trying to get in touch with that, don't seem to want to engage. So I'm willing to engage with anyone who's willing to. So thank you.
Okay. So we want to keep it simple most times. Having the conversation. So one of the things that I would say is define DEIB. However we're saying it today, break that thing down. Let's stop using acronyms. Just define that for your office or your organization. And that usually starts a good conversation about where you are as an individual and as a group. I don't want to say that there's a cookie cutter. Okay, I can name, you can call the YWCA of Central Maine, always training. Maine Black Chamber of Commerce, always going to support. I'll even call out my other board membership, the Maine Humanities Council, creating spaces for people to talk about being human. I would say keep it simple. I'm sure that there are a lot of, and I bet y'all are in here, a lot of organizations, a lot of companies, LLCs they're focused on doing that, on facilitating, and I'm one of those people, facilitating those conversations, those necessary but difficult conversations, but figuring out or saying or stating we are going to have it, or we're going to do this, creating that space. That's the most important thing. If you don't have the space, you can think about it and you could talk about it and feel a way about it, but it's never going to happen if you don't have a tangible space. Like I said, I have fourth Wednesday cross collaborative team time. It was empty for a year. It took me a whole year to get a program in that space, but the space was created. Also, if you are already thinking about this, there's a lot of resources online with just regular old questions, regular old protocols, case studies. Bring that. And I'm keeping it simple. Y'all can get elaborate and stuff, but keep it simple. Start the conversation, make the space, create a consistent space where those conversations are happening. Then once you figure out who your staff are and who you are and what kind of leader you are, then you can be able to build some sort of quote unquote program around diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging.
I just want to add. Hello. I just like to be practical. There are a couple businesses that have hired, and returned. So it's not just hiring, it's returning. I think it's easier to go to, give me an organization that's hired Merck, right? My staff, come to us. I mean, we'll be real. Like, I think, first of all, like you have everything online, the trainings. You don't even know how to. You don't even know how to read it to understand it. But I think I always tell folks, we need to be practical. I think we used to do this like, if you have a field trip, do a field trip to an organization as executive directors, as like program people, HR people, within organizations that are hiring and returning, because they have experiences. I think so. When you have that practical, it's very easy to take everything you see online, a training here, because then you can say, "Oh, that's what Mufala was talking about. That's what they're experiencing." But it's also, like I said, we're gonna have to invest time and money. HR, we're gonna have to invest time and money. It's not just checking a box that this money, and it's going to take a long time. But I think being practical and just seeing organizations that are hiring, and not just hiring, some organizations have more immigrants at lower level, others have more at higher level. You need to find like, okay, so we're gonna go to this for senior management. We're gonna go to this for middle management. We're gonna go to that. So we're gonna be, I think if you just do some learning, sightseeing.
One thing I've one thing I've seen chambers do is first figure out your employers, like what do they mean when they say they want to hire more diverse talent? And then literally figure out what their questions are so you can build a program to answer their questions. Because in order to hire diverse talent, you need to change the way you advertise. You need to change onboarding. You need to make sure you have a welcoming and inclusive culture. You need to make sure you have the training and resources and benefits that will benefit the population that you're trying to hire. And that's going to be different depending upon which diverse population you're looking at. So starting like super simple with like, what do we mean? And what would we need to do this? And then you can find the right field trip and figure out who has already done this, what are their best practices. But if you can't like boil the ocean, and so if you don't start with some specific questions that are regionally specific, that are appropriate for where your employers are, that are what the employers want, because the truth is that employers all have something else they have to do. Like they're all selling something, building something, producing something. And so figuring out how to nurture a new type of employee is not gonna be the top of their list or the top place where they're going to invest. So it needs to be easy for them or it won't work.
And the other thing to think about, too, I know we talked a lot about employees, but also think about, especially for chambers of commerce, BIPOC and immigrant business owners as well. I know the Mid-Coast, I think you said Mid-Coast, right? So Caroline Chung at Maine Tasting Center just invited me up on the 23rd for a night market where she's bringing Asian food incubators, businesses together. Jer Liansky at Red Kettle Kimchi, I'm sure you know. And then there's the one I just found near Stonington, which is Wild Blueberry Farm, owned by a white farmer with his wife who is Taiwanese background, but she does all the cooking and farming as well. And so I think if you do a sort of like a business inventory, or sorry, inventory of businesses in your region, you can kind of do a convening. Portland Chamber of Commerce, Greater Portland Chamber of Commerce has worked with Adilla, who I think I saw here earlier, in Black-owned Maine to do a lot of their outreach. And so I think starting with that and just sort of reaching out to your Black, Brown, Asian owned businesses, and then I know there are a lot of farms that hire migrant workers, so you might want to reach out to like Mano a Mano or organizations that work directly with migrant workers as well to kind of get a sense of what they need as well. I know they're a vulnerable population right now.
And I'll add that, at the end of the day, we're all neighbors. So if you don't know your neighbor, get to know your neighbor. Like you can't isolate an other in fragment. We still don't know each other as neighbors. And that is how you create a culture of belonging ultimately. So with that, I think we have to maybe wrap it up. We have time for one more question. Maybe one more question if I see one. Sorry. There's two, but there, I think she was first.
A real quick question. How can we donate? All of us here are invested in diversity, equity, belonging, and inclusion. How can we support you with our dollars? How can we donate directly?
Thank you very much. Philanthropy, which I talked about, if the causes that you care about the most. Is there a way, Julia, we can give them a link? Because there's a lot here. I think Merck could, we all could use it, but I'd love to see Merck get some support right now. So, Mafalo, is there any way she can donate?
www.maineimmigrantrights.org. maineimmigrantrights.org.
One of the other hats I wear is I'm the project lead for the Asian American Community Center Capital Campaign in Westbrook. If you want to find out more information about that, go to aaccmaine.org and learn more about that.
Over there, I think. Isha.
I'll make it quick. Ashley Boyle from Bangor Savings Bank. One of the things that's been heavy on my mind showed up on our word cloud this morning, and the word is dissonance. As individuals who work, who are doing this work and don't have the ability to disassociate from what's going on in our community, what can you say to the people who are struggling with that and using that as a tool to kind of manage the turmoil that's happening? How do we get them re-engaged? Because we need them engaged more than ever. And then what tools do you use to help manage what you have to live through every day?
Okay, you wanted a question.
So listen, I'm going to be biased here as an educator for the Maine Department of Education and all of our beautiful SAUs out there. Y'all, visit a school. That's our future. That's not going to change. I could be cliche, whatever. But if you go, that is the foundation of what's going to be that's what you're doing this for. If y'all don't believe that, you probably still need to visit the school so you can re-judge yourself. That is a really good way. And schools are very open to people visiting. They are looking for people to help and support in different ways. It may be funding, or it may just be seeing your beautiful face doing your beautiful job every day and inspiring them to do it too. Is really important. I'll also say that if you are somebody who has a skill, our continuing education programs, our career and technical education programs, they're really looking for, and we're looking for people who will be courageous enough to say, I have something to give to the next generation in my field, and let's do that. So keep that in mind. I hope that answered your question. I can go again.
I think I have some, just a quick, I think acknowledging that scale-wise in your organization. When I worked for the city of Portland, we held belonging tables without an agenda, just a way that departments could come together and express within a framework. And people cried, people laughed, but it was really sort of healing and helped us move forward in a very challenging time. I don't know if there's anything else, please.
I have a suggestion. Join one of our Black Travel Maine events. We bring the community together, enjoy, and everyone's welcomed. And that's the great part of our work is, connecting the community with all the people that are in the community and make up the community. So come join a Black Travel Maine event. Thank you.
Great. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, everybody.